Okay, so welcome to this week's Grant Fundamentals. The subject is the future. I sort of want to talk a little bit about.
Aww.
Yeah, exactly, because it kind of is this date, or it was very recently.
Yeah.
The future's kind of a weird thing. You know, we're never in the future. You know, it's always sort of away over the horizon, but at the same time, it's always rushing towards us. You know, kind of at the speed of light. And we have the opportunity to time travel. We have the opportunity to step into the future, so that as it comes towards us, we've changed it, we've shaped it, it's something else. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, the value of doing that and how we go about it. So I have a few questions I want to begin with. The first is, how do you change the world? There was a study in 2014 where they took two groups of patients and they made one do mild exercise for 4 weeks. And they made the other group sit in a comfy chair and think about doing mild exercise for 4 weeks. And the health outcomes in both groups were exactly the same.
Oh, nice.
So the power of the imagination to shape the world, I think that illustrates that very nicely. But there are some other ways in which we can think about how the power of imagination acts. And this is a really nice quote from the Buddha: what you think you become, what you feel you attract, what you imagine you create. Except unfortunately, I discovered that it's actually a fake quote from the Buddha. It's not real, which is really disappointing, because it'd be nice if that was true. It's actually a greeting card line. But, you know, having a dream and articulating that dream can be a very powerful thing to do. And yes, I have just had Martin Luther King and then Gandhi in 2 slides back to back, but there's another quote from Gandhi I want to read out, which is, your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. So what you begin in your mind, what you imagine, what you turn over, eventually becomes the world that you inhabit. And to me, that's a really important thing to take away. Second question: what's fun, right? How do we enjoy ourselves? What's the most fun that you could have at work? Might it be this, or perhaps this, or maybe this?
I should be done about his top as well.
Yeah. This is a quote from Joy at Work. They said when they wanted to set up AES that they wanted to make it a fun workplace, and they defined fun as rewarding, exciting, creative, and successful. And Dennis Macker said, most people experience game settings as fun when they're playing for something important and have a key role in deciding the outcome. You know, the whole origin of the advice process, which we talked about before, the idea of using your skills and talents to make decisions and take actions, you know, that's about creating a joyful, fun, rewarding workplace. And I think the reason why that's joyful, fun, and rewarding is because it's creative. You know, this is famously Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you know, right at the top is the self-actualization stuff. And this is stuff like creativity. This is the way that we express ourselves most profoundly in the world. Here's another great quote: for me, the most fun part of business is to dream of the future without worrying about how to get there. That's the best bit of the CEO's job. You may recognize the person that I'm quoting there. But to me, there's an important point here, which there is the way that you have fun at work is by being engaged in a challenging task that uses your skills, that's creative, that's interesting, that brings you alive. Okay, next question I want to look at: how do you fulfill your potential? You know, we know that helping people and businesses fulfill their potential is our mission as GrantTree, right? That's our purpose. But actually, one thing that we haven't defined within that is what's our own potential? You know, so we have to turn that purpose on ourselves. We have to try and fulfill our own potential as a business. How do we find that? You know, how do we get ourselves to the point where we're on fire? How do we, light that spark? We know that we want to grow as a business. We don't just want to grow slowly, we want to grow fast, we want to grow ahead of the curve. And we want to grow in every sense, right? It's not just the traditional sense of growth, of financial growth, although of course that's important. There are other dimensions that are important to us to grow in. You know, our skills. And what about our souls? What about our consciousness? What about our hearts? What about us as human beings? That's something that we need to grow as well, I believe. And if we want to do that, and if we want to do that fast, it helps to have some kind of target, right? The goal is not always meant to be reached. It often serves simply as something to aim at. But if we want to, if we really want to stretch ourselves, and again, I think being stretched is a kind of fun, right? Adds another dimension of fun to work. We need something to kind of put down a marker of a way in which we're going to challenge ourselves. So okay, let's look back at what we've talked about so far. We've said that it's important to have and to articulate your dream. We've said that work is most fun when you're being
Strip off.
creatively challenged. We've said that, if we want to have flying cars, if we want to travel into the future, we have to sow the seeds of that now. And we've said that we want to kind of light a fire on the business and we want to help fulfill our own potential. So for me, all of those things are united in one exercise, and I really can't think of a good name for it, which is why I've just put a picture of blue sky here, obviously for blue sky thinking, but anybody who can come up with a better name for this, I would really appreciate that input. So, if we are going to do some kind of blue sky thinking, I think what we need to have within the business is a regular practice.
How about you are the boss that we came up with yesterday?
Yeah. That's you're right. That's a good one. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Usually because I'm just doing all of this stuff and trying to download my brain onto the PowerPoint. But yes, we did come up with a
yes.
boss.
The Valve Employee Handbook starts with the quote: "You are the boss, and you're the future of the company depends on you."
Yeah.
And that's what we thought if we had the heading for this exercise as "You are the boss," because everybody in this company is, because we want to use all the brain power we have to come up with the vision for this company, then that could work.
So I think there's the one part of this which is the "You are the boss" exercise, and actually that there's some other stuff as well which will become clear. Actually, incidentally, the sky is equally violet as it is blue, so we could as well call this violet sky thinking.
Mm-hmm.
For me, all of these things are important, right? That we have a regular practice to come together as a whole company, to dream of the future that excites us, and to commit to moving towards it. And we need all of those, aspects, I think, to make it work. And I think it is really important that we bring this practice into the business. And I think there are a number of reasons why it's important that we build this practice into the business. For those of you who think that the stuff about candy and dreaming and putting things out there is a little bit fluffy, like this cloud, we could turn to another concept. What about evolutionary purpose, which is obviously a really important concept for other open culture organisations that's discussed in reinventing organisations. Justin's got that wonderful summary on Drive of that chapter. And for me, evolutionary purpose is kind of two things, right? It's both a purpose that's continually evolving, but it's also an evolutionary purpose, it's an evolutionary process that's purpose-driven, right? So there's two senses, I think, that we need to unpack, and I think maybe looking at reinventing organisations, the sense that comes out primarily is this idea of a purpose that's evolving, but I think that actually the more powerful sense is one of an evolutionary purpose that is, an evolutionary process that is driven by a purpose. So I want to look at a couple of case study businesses and how they use that kind of idea of an evolutionary process driven by a purpose. I got it right in the end. So the first case study is a manufacturing business, right? So they have this idea of saying, well, first you have to set your long-term kind of vision. Then you have to analyze where you are now. So you say, okay, the long-term vision's here, we're here, so it appears that our direction is going to be this, and you determine a short-term kind of first step that you're going to do. So you have this kind of long cycle of repeating and reviewing progress on where your kind of long-term goal is, what they call your North Star, right, or your magnetic north, the thing that you're navigating towards. And then you have these short cycles of constantly saying, actually, where are we now, and where do we think that North Star is, and what direction are we going to head in? So you're always adjusting your course. I think that one of the things that this does is, to me, this diagram I describe as there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? This is all of the work that you could be doing day to day. And when you have a clearly defined North Star, and it's more than just a purpose, it's a more kind of fleshed out vision of where you're going and a dream for the future, you have the option to select the way that you navigate through the day-to-day stuff that you have to do. So as well as achieving the stuff that you have to do, right now, you have an option to select to work on that in ways that also move you towards your longer-term vision. As well, there might be some tasks in here that are not day-to-day, that are just specifically towards that kind of long-term vision. But it's that shaping sense that's kind of important. And these two horizons, this kind of month-ish short cycle and this kind of yearish long cycle coexist. So that's one case study to look at. Another case study is a financial services case study, so maybe that kind of suits us because we're kind of a financial services business as well. And this is the founder talking about setting up the company and how they wanted to approach it. Basically, they had this very complex product that they wanted to offer. and they wanted to try and determine how they could structure an organisation.
And it's the founder of Visa, right?
Yeah. But actually, that's the big reveal, which you.
Oh fuck! Sorry.
Thanks. Yeah. So they had this complex product that they wanted to find a way to deliver, and he basically looked around and said, well, nature seems to be very good at this. The process of evolution seems to be really good at creating complex organisations that optimise in complex circumstances. So, there's this kind of, if we could only get evolution to work within the context of the organisation and the way that it functions, then we just sort of set it going and we will get optimization. So as long as you design the right DNA of the organisation, so as long as you said, what are we here to do, what's our purpose, what's our vision, where are we going, then eventually you get optimization. So I was going to say that in case you're wondering who these two case studies were, who are working with the evolutionary purpose, and maybe you're used to seeing people in these case studies who are kind of slightly fluffier, smaller, less well-known organizations, these two happen to be Toyota in the first case and Visa in the second case. And actually the Toyota process in case study 1, which they call the improvement kata, is also the origin of lean and agile. So it's been very influential in organizational design, so it's definitely something that we can learn from. One thing that you might be thinking is, if you've looked at reinventing organizations, you might be saying, okay, well, we're kind of talking about targets and stretching where we're aiming. It isn't one of the things that comes out in reinventing organizations that open culture companies aren't really into the idea of kind of KPIs and that kind of stuff. To me, there's some ambiguity there, and it's not totally clear. And the biggest distinction is really kind of one of attitude. I think this is an important point. What gets measured gets done, right? That's a nice summary of it. There's actually a whole book about it, Measuring and Managing Performance, which when we unpack all of our boxes will appear. And basically, this whole book exists to explain the fact that if you're doing complex knowledge work, if you're doing work that's quite multidimensional, and all work within GrantTree is by definition multidimensional, right? Because we're a self-managing business, there are always going to be aspects of your work that take you away from the kind of core stuff to the stuff that's more strategic, that's more about running the company. As soon as you have a multidimensional role, put any kind of performance measure on it, you distort it. And you prevent it from optimizing. So what we're not trying to do is say, we want to set ourselves a target and then follow the process through of sort of saying, oh, well, we're 20% through on this and kind of ticking a list. That to me is not productive, right? And that undermines the kind of evolutionary power. But saying where are we aiming at the moment, having that sense of a North Star, having a dream of the future that we want to create, to me is a really valuable piece that at the moment we're not doing on a regular basis. So, how do we put all of this stuff into practice? I have two requests. The first is a monthly meeting. This is the kind of you're the boss meeting, and this is broadly our proposal that we would like to ask you to take part in. A Friday afternoon meeting at the end of the day, 60 to 90 minutes, something like that, with refreshments, and it's a kind of, it's a creative meeting, right? It's a fun meeting. It's an opportunity to really let the creative juices flow in a situation that's high stakes, right? It really counts. So I know it seems like you look at this and you think, is this really the sort of thing that you want to do on the end of a Friday? But on the other hand, it is probably the most interesting, exciting, fun piece of work that you're going to do all week, if not all month. Remember that quote from Hal earlier about, this is the best bit of work in the business. And also for me, the beauty of doing this on a Friday and ending Friday with a kind of dream and vision of the future that's exciting, bit of energy that drives you through into, hopefully a nice relaxing weekend, but then also the opportunity to say, well, what's an action that we're going to begin next week? Everyone is going to begin next week with an action to move this forward. So you carry that energy through. Anyway, more to do here on exactly what that format is, so we make sure that's a really productive meeting. Rowan and Pao and I are working on that. We potentially like to propose starting that next week. Second request is that there may be other things that we need to do in order to get the maximum value out of this work, right? This is the Three Horizons stuff. For those of you who were here earlier in the year, we did this exercise, Richard led when we were doing the Vision Day. And it's essentially a way of saying that we're currently here and the future is here, right? So Horizon 1 is how we're doing things now. Horizon 3 is our kind of long-term dream and vision, right? That's what we want the future to look like. And Horizon 2 is the transitionary step. Horizon 2 is the stuff that we need to start doing now in the short term. So this has an analogy to the Toyota improvement kata, where Horizon 3 is the magnetic north, is the kind of long-term vision. And Horizon 2 is the short-term target condition that you're doing in these kind of monthly sprints or cycles. It seems to me that regularly touching base with Horizon 3 and keeping that up to date is important, but there's also stuff to do potentially around Horizon 2 and Horizon 1, right? There's a lovely bit, so this is a format devised by an organisation called the International Futures Forum, and they describe it by saying that Horizon 3 is the voice of the visionary, Horizon 1 is the voice of the manager, right, the concerns for today and how you fix them, and Horizon 2 is the voice of the entrepreneur, saying let's experiment, let's change, let's try something, let's move. So it may be the case that to get the most value out of this, I mean, maybe that the format evolves and actually we say if you have this monthly meeting, we want to include aspects of Horizon 2 or Horizon 1. Or it may be that instead of or as well as that, we say, well actually, maybe circle meetings become quite a good place to start doing this Horizon 1, Horizon 2 work. You know, if you think of the kind of process that's in Agile has retrospectives where you're saying, okay, what did we try, did it work, did it move us forward? And actually, you know, one of the things that I've heard quite a lot from people is we're very good at GrantTree trying stuff, but we're not very good at then saying, did it work? So actually introducing maybe some practices and disciplines into our other meetings to kind of pick up and drive this forward, I think will be good. I also think that this is a really productive mental exercise in the sense that it gets us doing two things. One, it gets us thinking creatively and holding the creative tension between the future as we want it to be and the present as it is now. Because that's really the tension of the creative process. That's how you make interesting things happen, is by holding those two visions and navigating between them simultaneously. But also this kind of thinking at a kind of dream vision level encourages us to think at the level of the whole business, at the level of the whole system. So it pushes us again and again into that place where we go beyond the blame situation of just constantly looking back at the past and saying who did what wrong, and instead looking forward to the future and saying actually, you know, what do we want to change, what do we want to happen, what do we want to need. And there's a quote from, if you remember when we did the strategy day that followed on from Vision Day, Dan was referencing the book Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. And one of the things that the author there says is, goals are not strategy, goals are wishes. Strategies are how one goes about achieving goals. So that the output from the You're the Boss meeting is potentially just goals. So there is then a strategic piece. And some of that's already ongoing with stuff like the tax credit disruption or the work that Grant's team are doing today and whatever you're going to call the task force who are working on that. But yeah, I just wanted to flag that, and I think that that's something that it would be good for us all to reflect on how that fits in well. So, you know, to end on this, if you want your flying car, there are the pieces. Start building. Questions or comments?
Good afternoon, Greg.
The thing on Friday afternoon, is that to replace the travel? Is that the similar event you're looking to?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And actually when I was doing this, I was thinking about the huddle and the anchor circle and blah, blah, blah. So for me, the purpose of the huddle is for kind of important news headlines of things that have happened and requests for action from the whole business. And I think there is a value in having, as we're doing now, like a short, sharp meeting every week where, you know, it's like the paper of record. You know, if you've asked for something at the huddle, then you've broadcast it out to everybody and you can hopefully rely on it. So that for me is what the huddle does. The anchor circle, I think, is basically I can't think of a nicer way to call it other than to say it's our monthly management meeting. You know, for me, that the anchor circle is there to sit down and review the kind of stuff that we would review in traditional management meetings, looking at the financial health of the business and what our compliance obligations are and things like that. So it's sort of the kind of directors sort of board meeting. I mean, of course, it's open to anybody. And I almost feel like, you know, if it becomes a monthly meeting and some people start to become interested in it and start going regularly, then anyone who goes regularly to that meeting should just become a company's house director so that they can handle the admin coming out of that meeting. And then this for me is much more of a, you know, like the dreaming of the future, the kind of strategic bit of CEO work and distributing that and getting everybody involved and excited in that.
I love the idea of it. I just wondered why you'd stick it at the end of the week.
There were a couple of things that would motivate us to do that when we were talking about it. One is that Friday afternoon is probably the quietest time of the week in terms of the pressures of core work, so we have more of an opportunity to get everybody involved. There's
And
also
have some
that-
fun with it as well.
Yeah, there's also that sense that it is like, you know, it's kind of time apart from the rest of your work, so like the kind of playful spirit of the weekend is what you want to bring into that kind of creative thought. You know, you want to take off the blinkers of the everyday work that, you know, that has to get done is really important, and step back and say, if it could be anything, what would it be? And I kind of feel like Friday afternoon is a good time for that, perhaps. I mean, it's a once a month thing. You know, maybe Friday isn't right, but that was kind of
I
my
was
thinking.
just curious. Like I said, I love the idea. I was just curious. You talk about it. I think what you're looking to is to bring the energy to the meeting, as opposed to use the meeting to energize everybody.
Yeah.
Be a fair sort of
Also what we're worried about is that there's already so many meetings that all of us get invited to, and at the same time all of us have stuff to get on with. This feels like a good time where you can actually, at least for me, it's easier to justify to myself, okay, it's 3 or 4 p.m. on a Friday, I actually want to dive into some creative stuff. Most of my work for the week that I wanted to get finished is finished. Never all of it is finished, because that never gets done, but I could actually justify that easier than if I was to justify taking a chunk of Wednesday or Tuesday, considering all the meetings that I already have, kind of thing.
I mean, you know, I'm sort of aware that this idea of a, you know, like your boss meeting, and that's what we're going to call it, that does this kind of stuff, may not be the right way to do it. And my primary concern really here is to introduce the idea that we should have some kind of practice of saying, what's the future that we want to happen for GrantTree, and checking in on that, and checking where our direction sits with that. Because I think that those are organisational practices that successful companies like Toyota and Visa have, and that we could learn from that, and that we could get a lot of power out of that. And I think that there are some first steps and some things that we can try immediately to move us towards that. But you know, everything is experimenting. So you know, we'll see if it works. Great. If it doesn't, we'll change it.
Big idea.
I really
Next
like
Friday?
it. So I really like it.